We're breaking news into CNN. A new DOJ watchdog report has just been released on the January 6th riot at the Capitol, and this finds that there were no undercover FBI employees at the Capitol during the riot.
This finding runs directly counter to speculation from allies of President-elect Donald Trump, who for years have suggested the violence that day was provoked by federal agents. CNN's Evan Perez joins us now, along with CNN senior law enforcement analyst and former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe. Evan, first to you, what does this report outline specifically?
Well, the most important finding that is one that you just outlined, which is that this claim that you've had from Republicans in Congress, allies of Donald Trump, who have claimed that the FBI had agents essentially undercover who helped instigate the riot, that there's video that seems to suggest, in their view, that either people who were being paid by the FBI were essentially helping to stage the insurrection that happened on January 6th. And this report flatly says that that did not happen. And of course, the FBI has been pushing back on this for the last few years, but that hasn't really satisfied members of Congress. And it's frankly one of the reasons why they had a beef with Chris Wray and why Chris Wray is no longer going to be FBI director. They believed that there was something to this conspiracy that's been running around. And what we do find, though, is that the Inspector General found that there were 26 members of these extremist groups that did attend the Stop the Steal rally, 26 of them who were being paid as informants for the FBI. Now, these are members of the Proud Boys, the Three Percenters, other groups that were here that day. And what we learned from this report is that 26 of them had been specifically told by the FBI, send us any information on possible violence and so on. And according to the Inspector General, 3 of those 26 actually did enter the Capitol. The others, did not enter. There's also a number of informants who were not specifically tasked by the FBI to provide that information, but they came anyway. They were supporters of Donald Trump, and so they came, and some of them entered the Capitol. So the important part of this is that for once and for all, the Inspector General who investigated this, has spent the last 3.5 years investigating this, has now said that this did not happen, that the FBI did not have paid employees, undercover employees, and did not instigate this riot. Now, another important finding that I should add, the FBI, obviously was in charge of gathering the intelligence before the riot, and one of the criticisms has been why they didn't do more. And according to the Inspector General, they did not ask all of their field offices to send in and to ask their informants to send in intelligence on this. And that was a failure. And they also provided bad information to Congress saying that they had done so. So that's an important thing that I think the FBI really is going to try to fix going forward, because obviously January 6th was a bit of an intelligence failure. We all know that. Because it happened, and law enforcement did not stop that violence before it happened.
Yeah, and Andy, we'll talk about the intel sharing here in a minute, but first, just your reaction to this report, but also that bit of information that no doubt some Trump allies or those who are sympathetic to January 6thers will seize on, which is that you did have these paid informants who were there, 3 specifically tasked by the FBI to report on specific domestic terrorism case subjects who may be going to the rallies that day, one of whom entered the Capitol.
Sure. So I have to say, overall, I'm not surprised by those conclusions in any way. If you've been following this story since January 6th, we knew through the discovery that came out in many of the criminal cases against January 6 participants that the FBI had intelligence from some informants. They had informants who traveled on their own by their own choice to participate in the rally, some of whom ended up on the Capitol, very few of whom ended up going inside. And the FBI had a very small number of informants who they directed to go and report on those activities. Now, it should be known, the FBI has many, many informants in the extremist communities around this country. That's part of running an intelligence, a capable intelligence collection program. You have to have informants in these communities. You admonish them that they are not allowed to involve themselves in criminal activity, but you don't control them. They can go pretty much wherever they want lawfully as they choose to do so. So I'm not surprised by the conclusions here about that at all. I don't think it'll change the narratives of those people on the Hill who have constantly beaten this false drum about FBI informants starting the riot. I expect that if past is any indication of how they handle themselves, they'll just direct all their ire at the DOJ IG now and claim that person has been, co-opted by Joe Biden or something. They're not going to back off this conspiracy theory. It's very helpful to them, but it is not based on fact.
And Andy, I'm curious to get your thoughts on the two sort of intelligence failures here. One, the Inspector General finding that the FBI didn't canvass all of its field offices for intelligence from informants who could have helped the Capitol Police and obviously other law enforcement agencies better prepare for what happened that day, but then also the communication from the FBI falsely telling Congress that they had done that. What do you make of that?
Yeah, so Boris, to me, this is the really more significant finding in the report. And it's something that many of us have been questioning since January 6th. How could, with this extraordinary informant base, how could the FBI not have known more? How could the FBI not have asked all of their informants whether or not they intended to plan on traveling and what information they had about the travel and participation of others? And so I think it's appropriate to call it out. If the failure was in the counterterrorism program as managed at headquarters is responsible for determining which major national level security events require that sort of precise intelligence collection in order to allow law enforcement to prepare their security measures. This was clearly one of those events. And the fact that they didn't issue that sort of a broad nationwide collection from all of their sources is really, there's no excuse for that. That's what the intelligence collection program exists to do, to collect that information and use it to inform decision makers as to how to protect the country, or in this case, the Capitol. So they were unable to do that adequately without having taken that step. The fact that they misrepresented to Congress that they had done it, it seems, just from my brief reading of the recommendations, there was a lot of confusion and disorganization around the preparation for this event. And I think that some executives thought it had actually happened. They were wrong. They didn't know that those calls had not been made and that collection hadn't been rounded up. So again, these were mistakes, not intentional acts. We're not trying to hang anybody out to dry here, but these are all areas in which the FBI really needs to focus and make sure they don't make those kind of mistakes in the future.
Yeah, they certainly do. And we'll see, Andy, and maybe you can quickly comment on this. As we're looking towards a new era at the FBI, do you expect that they will be taking the lessons learned from this and doing something with it? Do you have any concerns there?
Well, I'm confident that FBI people who do this work will double their efforts to make sure that it is done perfectly the next time and every time after that. I'm confident in them. But I am concerned about some of the comments that Kash Patel has made. If he is confirmed as FBI director, he's made a lot of comments about reducing the size of headquarters and getting rid of people at headquarters and sending them all out to the field. This is precisely the sort of mistake that can happen when no one in the organization has an adequate view of the entire threat picture, the entire country. And that's why the analytical capability and the investigative oversight was centralized in headquarters for these national security matters, not for criminal matters, but for national security matters in the aftermath of 9/11, because we realized this was not having that vision is part of why we didn't see 9/11 coming. Well, here, January 6th, we had the ability to do it. We just didn't do it, and we didn't see the attack coming. So Kash Patel is not going to solve any problems by taking headquarters resources and sending them elsewhere. He's actually going to make America less safe.
Yeah, real quick, one quick thing I wanted to add to what Andy is raising. The question of whether the FBI will still be focusing on these extremist groups, which are largely, let's say it plainly, they are mostly conservative leaning, whether that is going to be continued in the new administration, that's a big question as well. Are they even going to be interested in what the Proud Boys are doing at the 3%ers? We don't know, because that is certainly part of the base of Donald Trump's support.
Yeah, it's such a good point. And Chris Wray highlighted the threat of these groups,
Correct.
and yet you expect, based on rhetoric, that may not be shared if Kash Patel is the incoming FBI director. Evan, thank you so much for the great reporting. Andrew McCabe, thank you so much to you as well.